Hello and welcome to this very exciting event, and thank you so much for making the time to be here. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Buckley. I'm the Chief of Staff to Carol Schwartz AO, CEO of the Trawalla Foundation and the National Co-Convener of Pathways to Politics for Women. I am delighted to be hosting this fantastic Pathways alum event. To begin with, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the traditional lands on which we're all placed around Australia. And I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation where I am today and offer my respects to their elders and to all First Nations people with us. I recognise their deep and enduring custodianship of country. As we meet today to discuss political leadership, I particularly wanted to honour all First Nations female leaders who continue to stand up and advocate for their communities. So a warm welcome to our Pathways cohorts and alum from right across Australia. We're so pleased to have you here and excited by the political progress that many of you have made since the program. I wanted to thank our amazing founding partner, the University of Melbourne, who's helped develop this event, and of course, our 7 other wonderful university partners, QUT, UNSW, Charles Darwin University, and the Universities of Adelaide, Canberra, Tasmania, and Western Australia. I'm immensely proud of the national momentum we're building together. We are literally changing the face of Australian politics. Thanks. As we celebrate our 10th anniversary this year, we're reflecting on the incredible national community we've built together. Already more than 600 alum, with 160 more joining us this year. And indeed, most recently, we had 2 alum who ran in the 2025 Northern Territory local government elections, and both were elected. And we've got at least 5 running in the upcoming WA local government elections. So far, we've achieved 90 electoral successes across the political spectrum at local, state, and federal levels of government. And of course, this is just the beginning of what we hope to see in the coming years. Unfortunately, with this, we've witnessed an increasing concern regarding safety challenges, as many women face this as they run for office and are in office, particularly online. Whilst we strongly acknowledge the onus shouldn't be on the individual woman to address these safety challenges, and there are clearly major regulatory changes and other interventions urgently needed in Australia and internationally. And this will take concerted effort by many, and we know it won't happen overnight. So in the meantime, we wanted to find practical ways to support you so you feel more equipped to address what might arise. So on that note, hopefully you've seen the recent launch of a tool called Social Protect. The Women's Leadership Institute of Australia has invested in a licence for Social Protect so that all Pathways cohorts and alum have free access. It's a powerful app designed to protect your personal accounts from online abuse and support your well-being while allowing you to stay active and engaged in public life. Its practical focus, which includes deleting abusive commentary in real time from your accounts, has been transformative for the alum who've trialled it. So I strongly encourage you to take advantage of this tool and sign up now. We're also excited to have launched a national LinkedIn group, a space for you to connect with fellow alum across cohorts and across the country. So we hope you can use this space as a way to support each other. We've already got over 250 alums signed up, and we're keen for everyone to be part of it. So please do take a minute to join as well. So originally, Carol Schwartz AO, Chair of the Trawalla Foundation and WLIA and the founder of Pathways to Politics, was meant to be holding this conversation, but unfortunately she's now unable to be here today, and she sends her deep apologies and looks forward to being part of another alum event soon. So I'm very honoured to be holding the discussion instead. So let me first introduce you, Sally, and then I can't wait to get into it. And as we know, opportunities to learn from experienced and inspirational female political leaders is such an important aspect of Pathways. And I have to say, Sally Capp AO is a wonderful example of this. Sally was the first woman to be directly elected as the Lord Mayor of Melbourne. She served for 6 years between 2018 and 2024 and led the city through a very challenging pandemic period. Sally has had a range of firsts in her career. She was the first woman to hold the post of Agent General for Victoria in the UK, Europe and Israel from 2009 to 2013. And as an avid Collingwood supporter, she was honoured to be appointed the first female director of the Collingwood Football Club in 2004. She is currently a Vice-Chancellor's Fellow at the University of Melbourne and CEO of Create Melbourne. She's been involved in a number of charities and is currently sitting on the board of Cool.org and patron for the Royal Women's Hospital Foundation and the Lighthouse Foundation. She was awarded the Office of the Order of Australia in the 2023 honours and won the McKinnon Prize for Emerging Political Leadership in 2019. So a huge thank you to Sally for being with us. You've been such a fabulous supporter of Pathways right from the beginning, and we're so honoured to have you here to share your insights on political leadership. So let's get stuck into it. And I guess I wanted to start by setting that scene when you first walked into the Lord Mayor's office in 2018, and what was going through your mind?
Well, hello, Sarah, and everybody. Thanks so much for joining this session. I'm absolutely delighted to be associated and involved with this program. I am joining you also from Wurundjeri Wurrung country, and I'm constantly reminded of the power of their custodianship and care for this country. And I was influenced so heavily by female elders during my time as Lord Mayor, and I'm so grateful for everything that I learned and the way that they facilitated my leadership as well. I am going to come to those first days at Town Hall, but I really wanted to say that programs like Pathway to Politics just generate so much value. And even in preparing for today, I just wanted to read out one of my favourite bits, which is a discussion about the program and what it's all about. And it just inspires me, and it's a big part of the energy that comes from this program and the way that we interact with each other. But basically saying that this program is equipping diverse women to boldly embrace their political ambitions, to thrive as leaders, and to make a profound contribution to society. How fabulous is that? As the overall objectives for this program, I see it delivered each and every day, and I continue to be inspired by the many activities and people in this program. So thank you very, very
Thanks,
much.
Sally. And I think it's something we don't talk enough about is this is, as you say, it's mutually beneficial and re-inspiring for those that are already in political life. And we often hear that from presenters and mentors and others. It's very meaningful.
Yeah, and I hang out with so many of the alum, and we talk about pathways, not just with fondness, but a real recognition of the power of the program, which is so nice that we all benefit from. So thank you. Now, Town Hall. Now, this is a really big, and it's a great question, Sarah, because it goes to so much that I learned during the campaigning. And I don't think anything can really prepare you for campaigning. It's the most brutal part of the whole experience of getting into, I found, of getting into being an elected representative. And one of the things that I found so confronting and really taught me a lot of lessons about myself and others as well is the sorts of assumptions that we automatically make about people and situations and decisions and actions. And of course, we make assumptions every day because they're great shortcuts for all of us, you know, whether it's what the weather says, although in Melbourne that doesn't apply so much, but, you know, through to bigger issues. But something that I found really confronting during the campaign is that people had already made so many assumptions about me. And it came through in many, many different ways. I kept turning up to all these Meet the Candidate events like a puppy dog with bright, shiny eyes, and my ears were up and my tail was wagging. I was just so excited to interact with people around ideas and around objectives and outcomes that were important to community. And in one of the early ones of those, I got a real slap in a metaphorical way, and that was because a couple of things happened. Firstly, there was a lady sitting in the audience who basically sat there like that. Can you see that L for loser? She basically sat there like that through the entire evening. I wasn't the only candidate. There were 14 candidates on stage, but she just stared at me and did this to me all night as a way of really trying to undermine me, and very much sending a clear message to me what she thought about me. And of course, I'd never met this woman before. So I didn't know why she was doing that until question time. Each candidate had done their 3-minute introduction. And in question time, the first question was for me. Well, I was beyond excited. I got the first chance to stand up and respond to community. And the first question was a gentleman named Peter, who got up and said, we don't care what Sally Capp has to say tonight. We believe that she represents greedy developers who have destroyed our neighbourhood here in South Bank, and there is no way that anybody here is going to vote for her. That was the first sort of statement rather than a question. And I needed to respond, obviously, very quickly in my 90 seconds allotted to that. But it showed me how deeply people had taken my last role at the Property Council and interpreted that or extrapolated that across everything to do with Sally Capp. So I very quickly used my 90 seconds to talk about the breadth of my experience and why I thought that was important for being an elected representative and the Lord Mayor of Melbourne. And when I looked at people's faces, including the lady with the L, I realised that people hadn't looked beyond what my last role was. In all of the materials that I'd been handing out and other speeches and media opportunities, etc., still the only thing that was coming through to this audience was Property Council, Property Council, Property Council. So I needed to pirouette very, very quickly to respond to a lot of the judgments that had been made about me and what my focus areas were going to be and what was inspiring me to put my hand up. And I can come back to that story later in how it all transpired into something very special. But in those moments on that night, I realized that I couldn't rely on people assuming the right things about me, the right intentions, the right sort of skill sets and experiences, the right abilities to deliver on community expectations. And I really say that to everyone. Please be very aware that people have made judgments and assumptions about you, so you have to be willing to respond. But at the same time, you can't then make judgments and assumptions. And it's really important for me in those first couple of days as Lord Mayor, I went straight back to making judgments and assumptions because I'd put my hand up because of the outrageous, unacceptable behaviour by the former Lord Mayor at Town Hall, sexual harassment, issues with alcohol, all sorts of behaviour issues. And that was my driving force, something better for Melbourne, to be part of culture change and to really lead from the front. And so when I got to Town Hall that first day, firstly, I'd been pumped up by a whole lot of people around me to say, you've got to go in and be a strong leader and a hard leader and lay down the law and change behaviours, a lot of this sort of stuff, which actually isn't me. I am not that sort of leader naturally. So I'd got myself prepared. I've never been in Town Hall before, so I've never been an elected representative. So I was listening to people around me. And I also made assumptions about my first meeting with the councillor group was they'd all been here and seen all of that. And therefore, I judged them in that way. So when I went into my first meeting, which I saw as my first test, I sat down and I sort of went like this, and I looked at everybody around the councillor table and said, these behaviours are unacceptable and things have to change, and I've already made these decisions. We'll be doing this, and this will be changing, and you can no longer do this. And when I looked around this councillor group, I realised that I had made terrible assumptions and judgments about what was necessary and what sort of leadership was necessary as well, because what I saw was shock. And I saw a lot of people that had also been deeply impacted by the situation at Town Hall, and that the sort of leadership they needed was not more of that authoritarian style of I do as I say and don't ask any questions. all of this occurred, in those moments, but somebody that was really, really willing to listen, to collaborate, to realise the depth of the trauma that existed at Town Hall for individuals and for the group, and to respond very differently. So I had to close the meeting and say we'd reconvene later that afternoon. And luckily, they all came back, and I started again with an apology and with a completely different approach, which was really to ask questions. And I think asking questions is one of the best superpowers you can have. It changes the dynamic of conversations. It means you avoid assumptions. It gives you good chances for listening, which gives you context before you step into anything. And I spent a lot of time asking questions in that meeting and beyond. And it also reminded me that I'm only ever going to be an effective leader if I'm authentic to who I am as a person and my style. And whilst that has other ramifications from time to time, which I can talk more about in a moment, but ultimately, if you're not leading in a way that is authentic to you, then it's very exhausting, it's very fake, and it leads to bigger challenges. And what
I couldn't agree more.
I saw in that moment, there was a big challenge that I really wanted to lead on and help resolve, but by doing it the wrong way, I was going to actually create even bigger challenges.
And I love that you're being so open about the fact that you didn't start in the way that was appropriate or intended, but you were able to then apologize. I suspect that's not always the way these things play out, and often leaders will double down on that approach. So I think there's something quite powerful in that concession. And I mean, how long did it take to sort of rebuild that trust? You've talked about what a turbulent time it was. How were you able to help that settle down and refocus? And I guess we were curious about whether being an independent helped, because of course there were no doubt political tensions across the group of councillors as well.
There were, and I think it did help, definitely, and it helped externally as well as internally. It gave me the opportunity to create really sort of safe spaces, and I think that was an important part of leading in those turbulent times, because there was such a breakdown of trust. And it's a really interesting one, because a lot of people at Town Hall would say that they demonstrated a lot of loyalty, but that loyalty to certain people resulted in a complete breakdown of trust across the organisation. The culture was broken from lack of trust. And from trust, of course, comes so many other elements like respect, empowerment, even effective accountability. These things are very, very reliant on trust. So, and look, I'm a challenge to improve person, which is again why I love questions, because I think we need to have environments where we can keep challenging each other in positive, constructive ways to achieve something better. Otherwise, we just keep doing ordinary or lowest risk or easiest, which isn't always the best. So I came in knowing that I wanted to do challenge to improve. But to do challenge to improve, you have to have a lot of trust, because people have to
Feel like
trusting you, so that one, they can receive feedback and questions in the right way, and they can also give feedback and ask questions in the right way. So it's a duality of trust. And so working with the executive team and other councillors, we quickly started focusing on big ways and small ways. Big ways like massive policy changes, and small ways like day-to-day behaviours, to change the paradigm on trust, to encourage questions, to encourage people to voice their concerns, to create, not just by perception but by reality, safe places for people to raise issues that are of concern to them. Now, one of the biggest challenges about doing that at the time at Town Hall is that and we had lots of advice from experts, is that when you do create those safe spaces, expect more complaints, because the fact is, in being in an environment where so many conversations and issues are suppressed, when you create a safe space, expect, sort of an explosion of, I don't know why my camera's frozen, I'm so sorry, an explosion of people having the conversations they've been desperate to have.
Yeah.
So we prepared ourselves for that, because that requires a lot of resourcing as well. But it also requires the courage to be really vulnerable to that, not just as an individual for me, because it wasn't so much about me, but as an organisation, to say we are open to being more challenged. And to having those conversations and to making sure we're properly prepared and resourced. So those complaints increased, and I'll remember particularly one gentleman who had been bullied terribly in the organisation, and who wrote to me and said that it changed really his whole life to feel that he was a person that was valued and that he could talk about the issues that were happening to him, and that he felt he was then making a change, not just in his life, but also a positive contribution to the organisation. Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. And the fact that he'd got to that point was just wonderful, acknowledging, of course, he'd gone through a lot of difficulties to get there. But I think that leadership in turbulent times is, and they're all different circumstances, but I'll come back to a lot of listening, a lot of demonstrating that you're serious and committed to the change by the big changes. In this case, a lot of policy change, a lot of statements very publicly from me, internally and externally, consistency across leadership on behaviours and approach, investment in the right resources and processes, but absolutely has to be backed up with the everyday behaviours. So as part of that, I got the counsellor group together, just the counsellor group, as part of our induction. They'd never done this before, and said, we're going to have our own framework of what's acceptable and unacceptable behaviours, what are our aspirations as a group, because tone from the top is incredibly important all the time, but particularly during times of change. So we came up with our own keywords and aspirations and key behaviours. And then I used that as a tool throughout my time at Town Hall. We refreshed it. And we also shared it with the executive, so they knew how we were holding each other to account and what was important to us. And we could then reflect on what, where they were at as an executive team and what they were wanting to achieve. And it created different language, easier ways to identify and comment good and bad on behaviours, but really a shared alignment on where we wanted to be. And made a really positive impact on that change agenda during turbulent times, for us to show that we were doing it as well.
That sounds fantastic. And I think particularly important groundwork because whilst it was a turbulent start, of course, you were then flung into perhaps the most extreme version of crisis leadership, when you then went through that period of Melbourne going through some of the longest lockdowns in the world. So it sounds like you did some great groundwork, but how did that then translate into an intensely pressured environment? You obviously were juggling a lot of competing and complex priorities. There was public health, there was business survival, there was community morale. Talk us through how you presumably had to step it up another level again, but also the personal impact on that and how you coped with such intense pressure as well.
Yeah. I mean, life, it's just crazy, isn't it? You go in thinking there's going to be this one big issue and you want to make an impact on that, and then everything else keeps piling on top. We had an act of terrorism in Burke Street Mall with Sisto Malaspina very, very sadly dying. And during that, a lot of fear and angst and anxiety in our community. And then we rolled into COVID, and Melbourne is one of the most locked down cities in the world, and all of the uncertainties and fears and anger and that came with that at every level. And all of us have experienced the pandemic in different ways and responded, I know, with great leadership. For me, there are a few standout things. Firstly, I have a daily saying, and sometimes I say it to myself more than once. Sometimes, yeah, I have to lock myself away for a moment to say it to myself. But I'm going to say it to you, and I'll refer to it as I go forward. But it goes like this: I'm only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something, and I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. And that saying is really important to me for lots of reasons. When I feel like things are out of my control, of course, as an A-type personality, I want to bring it back to feeling that it's not just that I'm only one person, but hang on, I am one person, and all of us can make a difference, whatever we're doing, even if it's just in a small circle around us, or we have a much bigger halo or ripple effect. Really taking that power back to realizing you are one and you can make a difference. The second part of it is I cannot do everything, but I can do something. Now, there was so much happening during COVID. It was overwhelming. It was exhausting. It was sometimes felt insurmountably impossible to be on top of all of those issues. So for me, when it gets to that point where the everything seems to be taking control, really focusing on the something. And I think this is a key thing for elected representatives as well. Where are you going to make the biggest impact? Mm-hmm. Not just an impact, but the biggest impact. And it often comes back to systems changes and process changes or scale or those sorts of things. And for me, that was really important. The other thing it often comes back to, and it's the I am one as well, is you are a voice for people that would not otherwise be heard. So how are you using that voice? And I was actually so surprised during COVID at the power of the voice that I had. Because I think, like a lot of women, we always underplay our roles and we think nobody really cares that much. But boy, I got so impassioned about what was happening in Melbourne and making sure other people knew about it that I just started using my voice, and it went from there. And look, the last part, because I'm going to come back to that, is I cannot do it. Sorry, I just said that bit. I won't let what I can't do interfere with what I can do. Well, local government, golly gosh, by the time federal government made decisions and then state government made decisions, we landed with all of the effects and outcomes of those decisions in how people were responding in our local community. And there was so much that we couldn't control. So focusing on the things we could do became paramount. And that gives us really good positive momentum. I'm a really big believer in momentum. And sometimes that momentum then helps overcome some of the barriers that exist on other issues. A classic example was that at one point the Australian Prime Minister made some very damaging comments about international students, their role in Australia, and the fact that we weren't going to care for them here and they should go home. For so many of our international students who are critical to the city of Melbourne, they didn't have a choice. So rather than trying to counter all of that in, political ways, we looked at what were the things we could do to really show our international students that we cared, that we valued them, and that we understood what they were going through. And so we initiated a number of programs, including support for food, basic things like food, and it ultimately strengthened our relationships with that part of our community in exponential ways. So I really, so that's a demonstration during those times of how I managed to cope. And also, in terms of all of those competing priorities, understanding what role did local government have to play that was different to other levels of government? What's the point of duplicating or even countering those programs when we could be doing things that were differentiated and of value to continue to support people in need? That was really our focus. And that was our way of working through the different layers and the different elements to prioritise and to make sure that we were making a difference with every single effort and resource that we had.
Yeah, and I really love that mantra. I think that's something that'll stay with plenty of the alum. You could see there are lots of hearts and thumbs up for that. I think it's just a really good practical thing for leaders to consider. How do you bring yourself back to refocusing and keeping it very practical? I mean, in amongst all these crises, of course, though, you were also really heralded for quite bold policy initiatives, improvements around housing, infrastructure, urban resilience. So what are you most proud of achieving? And was there a particular moment where you thought, yes, this is why I wanted to be Lord Mayor?
Yeah. Well, again, I was surprised at how many incredible people I met and opportunities I had. I was also, of course, frustrated many times about how difficult it was to do things, or how frustrating other people's agendas could be when they didn't match mine. Let's face it, we're all here to do stuff. So, these roles are exhilarating and exhausting all at the same time, and balancing those elements is really important. And I was really, well, you asked that first question, Sarah. I probably should have also said, I didn't really understand the full extent of the role of being a councillor and a Lord Mayor when I came in, and the breadth and depth of it, of any elected representative role, is completely surprising to novices, and something that it's really hard to explain to members of the public, because they really don't care. They just want you to fix the problem that's at hand. So hats off to everyone for putting their hand up, and of course everybody that's in elected representative roles. I've got completely new respect for all of that. But the moments of feeling pride, I'm a big thinker, so I came in with lots of big ideas. I think leaders need to have big visions and have the ability to convene and coalesce and motivate people around big visions. And whilst you have those big visions that take a long time to deliver, and they're usually very much about the future and they've got scale to them, you have to be doing things day to day to show people that you are responsive, that you see daily issues, current issues, and that you've got ways of addressing those issues on their behalf as well. So you've got that dual act going on. But without, it's a momentum thing for me, without the big vision and helping people understand where they can get to over time with you, you won't get as much momentum on the day-to-day things as well. It's easier to keep people moving along if you are able to have those long-term visions. They're not easy, but I think they're really important. So I have a lot of pride in some of those big ideas, like Make Room, which is a facility for people experiencing homelessness, which people told me from the very start when I got in, you can't do that. That's not for local government. And I said, well, these are people that we represent that need care, but they also have, deep impacts across the city in lots of ways on lots of other stakeholders. We can do something, we should. And we ended up with a brilliant facility of safe housing that shows that we value people and gives them dignity, has full services, which is a new model for us, which we're trialling with the state government, the Royal We, and sets up for change really across the system, all going well. I was absolutely thrilled. Took me 6 years, but we eventually got there. So I'm thrilled. Green Line is another one that's much bigger. That's going to take years and years still to deliver. It felt almost insurmountable at times, but 95% positive rating amongst members of the public, which really kept me motivated. Ask the people you actually represent and keep going. because there are plenty of organisations and people that have their own agendas and they're going to want to send you in other ways. But Sarah, I wanted to just quickly give an example of the little things that people will never otherwise know about or see. They bring me as much joy, almost bring me to tears every time I talk about them, because they're the unseen and the unknown, and they're just so important. Following the hard lockdowns during COVID in the North Melbourne public housing towers, which was one of the most traumatic things anyone's ever been through. And I wasn't even one of the residents, and it still impacts me this way. But after that, we realised that levels of trust with our local community there was so low. Of course, we didn't make that decision, but we're all government, let's face it. So we needed to make huge efforts. We wanted to really build those relationships and the positivity back up in those communities. So we had some workshops about things they really wanted to see. And there were things that were within the control of government. Here's my things I can do and things I can't do of local government. So we prioritised those. And then we had a list of things that they desperately wanted, but that we didn't control. They were mostly state government. And the top of that list was a different school zoning, because the school zoning went along the boundary of the public housing towers. So all those kids in the local neighbourhood that are in public housing had to go off somewhere else to go to school. And all the kids on the other side, who they saw every day on the playgrounds and in the streets, they went to the lovely new local primary school. And it was heartbreaking for so many of the parents in the towers. And they said, we just desperately want to see that zoning changed. And I said, well, look, we can't control that, but we'll do advocacy with you to see if we can get that changed. And we did get it changed. And those sorts of things just, the skips.
So the ripple effect of that.
Yeah. It's just so joyous. And those moments really energize you to keep going.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great example. Well, let's talk a little bit about being a senior female leader. I mentioned you were obviously the first directly elected female Lord Mayor. What was that like? Did you think or feel that the expectations and scrutiny were different?
Well, again, I'd never been in a role like this before, so I didn't have much to compare it with. But I could certainly see very quickly that the way I was being portrayed or reported was different to male colleagues. And I guess in many ways I then wasn't surprised, because, I've grown up through my career in different roles of understanding those prejudices that exist at, an institutional level, and also on a one-on-one basis, starting even as a young lawyer. And so I'm somewhat battle worn from that and completely up for the challenge. It's a big part, I think, of putting your hand up, is acknowledging that you are taking on some of that responsibility as well. And it's an absolutely worthy quest to keep knocking down not just the glass ceilings, but the dark coloured glasses, if you like, that are overlaid onto women in leadership roles, particularly by media, but surprising by a lot of other people in the community as well. So for me, it was, I had to quickly make assessments and adjust to that part of my leadership role there. I am a serial have-a-goer, so I'm very used to humiliation and embarrassment and failure. I think that's also been good for my battle scars and my preparedness for some of these things. As you mentioned earlier, just because I am somebody that puts my hand up for things all the time when I feel really strongly about them, I've ended up being first in a number of ways. First female board member at the Collingwood Football Club. Whoa, did that get a reaction at the time?
I can imagine that might have almost been more extreme.
It was very extreme, I can tell you. and then being Agent General overseas for Victoria as the first female. Even the Queen had a little chat to me at one point about that, which was very nice. So these things can take time, but completely worthwhile. But I want to say to everybody that I mentioned campaigning earlier because it's so personal as well. You don't always have the backing of the organisation or the information during those times, and the vitriol is very much part of campaigning. And then when you get in, it's the criticism and the scrutiny, fair or unfair. I always check in with myself on that. Is it fair? Do I need to make a change, or is it unfair? And really having your own methods for being able to respond and deal with that is important. Trusted advisors, people whose opinion you really care about so you can check in. I always, as I said, listen because things were a barometer. When things were unfair, I normally put them into the box of they're the people that want to undermine me, stop me from doing something fabulous, who are bitter and twisted, revengeful, all sorts of other buckets that I could put it to, start to compartmentalize it and then manage from there. Again, a lot of those things you can't control. So I think recognizing that, putting them in a bucket, was an important way for me to be able to move forward. And it really, if anything, ultimately would strengthen my resolve on key issues, particularly. If there were certain quarters of media and social media who came out strongly against something, I almost took that as I must be doing something right, to upset those people. So I think it's very personal. I used to let things hurt me just for about 90 seconds because I think it's human to have emotion about these things. But then I would find the ways of moving on. And when I got a chance to say something, whether it was to a reporter or a photographer or a media commentator or online about how what I was receiving in terms of scrutiny or comment was different to male colleagues, where there's a really good direct comparison, I would make that comparison. I would absolutely call it out. The other thing that I did occasionally was I would ask male leaders to call it out as well. Because sometimes, those voices are heard more than our voices. But I think calling it out is really surprising to a lot of people. They back off pretty quickly. The lady with the L, I chased her down at the end of the night to find out why was she doing that to me. I'd never met her before. And she told me she hated me. She was a Green supporter. We ended up having a bit of a chat, and she gave me the opportunity to talk about some of the things that were important to me. And I heard some of the things that were important to her. And we ended up quite good mates. And Peter, who'd got up to make the statement at the start, ended up helping me with my second campaign. He got up in our first forum when I was Lord Mayor, and he said, I've got to tell you, you made me think about who did I really want as our Lord Mayor? What sort of skills and experiences did we need? And he said, Sue and I ended up voting for you. So I think, seizing those opportunities and not being scared to call things out and address the assumptions and judgments. But can I just say it's exhausting as well. Please don't, there's no superheroes here. There are no easy answers. There's no quick way out of these situations. It's really hard work and it's really worthwhile. And it's why we're so grateful to Pathway to Politics for preparing and encouraging women leaders and so grateful to you all for considering this pathway forward.
Thanks, Sally. And I might ask you one more quick question, and then I want to open it up to the alum. So please start thinking about what questions you might want to ask, and be ready. I'll let you know, and then you can do the raise the hand function as well. But Sally, I mean, you're a very compelling role model, and they were just fantastic examples of how you're doing that. But you have also been such a champion behind the scenes for many other women, encouraging them to run and so forth. You've been a mentor on this program as well. I think there's something very particular, as you've touched on, around local government. So I'm just curious what advice you would have for those that are thinking about local government or in local government right now. How do you overcome some of those particular challenges?
Yeah. Look, it's so true, because local government, you're on the coalface with community, and the time spent in community can be joyous and it can be heartbreaking. And as I said, it can be exhilarating and it can be exhausting. And I don't think that when you're in the other levels of government, you fully appreciate the challenges that come from being so accessible to your voters and your stakeholders. I think it's also great learning and the best experience to take into policy discussions and to think about legislative changes and to be able to speak confidently to, what the needs are and the aspirations are. But it has unique challenges, and certainly I couldn't go anywhere or do anything without having the councillor / Lord Mayor persona on all the time. Even if I was on holiday, I went on holiday to Japan and I was standing down the back of the plane having a drink of water, and somebody came up and said, "Are you the Lord Mayor of Melbourne?" So you can't escape it. And I think from that situation, it can be overwhelming. The other thing that comes with that is that it's constant requests from people. Could be something's happened with their bins, through to a really big idea for your area. And you want to be able to receive all of those, and you want to be seen as a doer and a leader in creating solutions and outcomes, etc. But you can't do it all. And actually, it's not your role to do it all. You've got a big executive team that you work with, whether it's, in my case, council, or it could be a department. You've got your electoral team to work with. You've got other organisations and bodies to work with. You can't do that. So one of the things for me that can be really hard in local government, because we're literally in and out of people's lives and in the minutiae of that every day, is to really consciously make time to lift your head up and your eyes up and your shoulders back and look at the big impacts. And by that, I don't just mean the big projects or programs, but I mentioned earlier the systems changes, the improvements that can be made that will benefit lots of people, not just one person. If people came to me often with an individual complaint, I would say, look, you need to make that to council officers through the appropriate processes. But I'll ask some questions too, just to see if there's a systems breakdown or there's some sort of improvement that we can make to the program overall. And that just gave me the opportunity to lift myself up a little bit. You often have to bite your tongue in these roles, and keeping your eye on the bigger picture is good at those times as well, because you're working on something, or there's somebody else that's responsible that you can talk to. And I think that in local government, because of that proximity to people, they need to be really good at listening, to be really good at convening people, to be really good at collaborating is important. And then you've got to balance that with being decisive. And that's not always easy. I am a collaborative team player by nature. I love that sort of stuff. I love being with people and getting in amongst it. But as a leader, you've also got to be decisive. It's actually why you're there. The over analysis leading to paralysis when you're in the minutiae of people's lives is a really big risk. I see it all of the time in local government. And, lifting your eyes up and thinking about decisions that can have big impacts, I think is really important. Certainly helped me anyway.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sally. Great. Well, let's open it up for any of you to ask a question. It might be that we've got a raised hand already, but I'm not sure I can see it yet. If you're able to unpin me, have we got anyone who's got a question to ask? Even if your raised hand isn't working, you can perhaps wave and I'll see if I can catch you. Or Erin or Rach, if you see one, let me know. I've got plenty more questions myself, but I just think it's a really wonderful opportunity for you all to ask Sally directly. Fantastic. Angela, if you unmute, go for it.
Hi, Sally. Great to hear you. And thank you, Sarah, for facilitating. I'm just considering lead times, like how far out, when you decided you were going to run for Lord Mayor, how far out did you decide, and when did the rubber really hit the road for you with regards to election day?
Good question, Angela. Thank you. It was can I say an anomaly, my first campaign, because the former Lord Mayor resigned suddenly. So it was a by-election. It was midway through a term. And literally from February, the election was in May. And I had previously not been in any role like this before. Now, some might say that was a good thing because you just had to jump in. But when I talk to people about this, I think there are a few things that I would recommend about starting earlier, a lot earlier. Firstly, are you involved now in any local groups, issues, programs, projects? It's just a great way to get to know people, to listen, to be involved, to see what's important, to see what makes a difference, to identify for yourself what are the issues you're passionate about and what your priority is going to be as a leader. So I really recommend being involved just as a participant really early, because it's a great way to test and experience. Then my second thing would be, I didn't have any idea how to go about it either. My husband and I literally sat across each other and said, what the F do we do now? I didn't even know how to register to become, which is why Pathway to Politics is so awesome, because they explain all of those processes. But I really quickly realised I needed a little team around me. One was a paid person who ran my campaign, who, unbelievable, got us all organised. And the rest were volunteers. And I would say the volunteers were one of my secret weapons. And if I had more time, I would have been able to have proper conversations and build up the volunteers around things that we had in common as priorities and aspirations. I wasn't in that situation, so I basically lent on everybody I knew and twisted their arm to become a volunteer. So that's the second thing, is team. First thing is participating. And then the next thing is, who are the stakeholders that are going to be really important to you as champions for you, even on the issues that you have in common? And how do you start building up your relationship profile and even collaborating on some of those ideas you might take into a campaign, because they in their own right have significant influence that can then support your aspirations. And those relationships can take, well, a lot longer than what I took in. Once you're in, you're effectively campaigning the whole time you're there, of course. You don't think of it that way, but that's what you're doing. But I think that first time, starting early and testing, and the fact that you're on the program means that you're already intentional and you'll be getting organised. But they're just some other thoughts.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Thanks, Angela.
Angela, thank you.
We've got Quinn, one of our councillors, by the looks of things.
Hi, Quinn.
Now we haven't got any sound, Quinn, from you, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for your presentation today. It was so informative and useful for some of the things that's happening in Adelaide, and particularly in the Council of City of Charles Sturt, where I'm working. One of the questions I'd like to ask is to lean into what you've said with regards to over-analysis leads to paralysis, and particularly in the lead up to our next state election, and where there may be cases where with regards to large government funding. So to cut the question short, my question is, what can you do to influence decision making so that your decisions become more decisive, but still with regards to balancing the needs of all local community members, to enable the area in which you represent capture large government funding from federal government? So when you're balanced, because
I'll give you two things, but I'm happy to have a chat with you separately, Quinn, and Sarah's got all my details, and Erin. But two things are really important. Firstly, evidence and data, because you can't argue away from evidence and data. It is really important that you've taken the time to collect some evidence and data. And the second thing is, what is a tick for them that is also a tick for you? Let's face it, at the end of the day, these, where you can show big community support for a program or a project that would be funded by that other agency, federal or state, and that's a tick for them, well, then you've normally got a match. But if you don't have a tick there, obviously you've got your policy outcomes, etc. And they'll go into your evidence and data, and let's face it, popularity, they go together. And in terms of decisiveness, that's a judgment that you've got to make, and you've got to call it at some point when you've got enough of those two things to bring together and say, we're moving forward this way.
Great advice. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you so much.
Got time for that last question from Bianca. Go for it.
Thanks, Sarah. Much appreciated, Sally. Very inspiring. I've got a question about why you decided to leave politics, and what your reflections are, and how is life after politics?
Really good, Bianca. Thank you. I will be quick. I loved my time at Town Hall. I absolutely loved it. And when it came to making a decision about re-election for another 4-year term, that was a really big threshold point for me, because I don't think anybody should go into an election without committing to the entire term. And that would have meant just over 10 years in office for me. And I needed to then look back, and this is an important part of self-reflection. Had I achieved a lot of the things that I wanted to? And did I have the same energy and determination to keep doing that at the same level of intensity, because that's who I am, for another 4 years? And if I was doing something else, could I still have purpose and feel that I was making a difference? And so I weighed all of those things up, including, I've got to say, Bianca, which is very personal, impact on family and the impact on their lives as well, and balancing that up with things that I wanted to do and achieve. And when I thought about all of those things, I became very resolved that I was happy with where I'd got to in my 6 years, what we'd been able to do together, and that it was a good time for somebody else to take on leadership and for me to demonstrate that I'm still committed to so many of those causes and this amazing city, and I could do that in different ways.
I think that's a really wonderful place to wrap up. So on behalf of everyone here and all of the Pathways community, I wanted to offer such a heartfelt thank you to you, Sally, for being so generous in what you've shared today. You're a true role model for leaders and aspiring politicians across Australia.
Very kind of you.
Yeah, I know many of the women here will take these insights away and think about how to integrate it into their leadership